The autumn rain had stopped only minutes before the floodlights of the Los Angeles Civic Arena illuminated the night sky. Long lines of spectators stretched around the massive building, everyone eager to witness what newspapers had been calling the ultimate test of strength. Television crews rolled heavy cameras across the polished concrete floor. Sports reporters adjusted their microphones while photographers searched for the perfect angle. Inside the arena, more than 7,000 people filled every seat, their conversations blending into a steady roar that echoed beneath the high steel ceiling. The event had already featured several martial arts exhibitions, weightlifting demonstrations, and professional wrestling performances. Yet everyone knew those were only appetizers. The real attraction had been saved for the end of the evening. A challenge, not an official championship, not a sanctioned tournament, simply a challenge designed to answer one question that had fascinated people for years. Could skill really overcome overwhelming size? At the center of the arena stood an elevated wooden platform reinforced with steel beams beneath it. Organizers had strengthened it after learning who would be stepping onto it. Because the challenger weighed nearly 210 kilograms. Backstage, enormous footsteps echoed through the hallway. Victor Dragan adjusted the tight black shirt stretched across his mountainous chest. Every movement caused muscles in his neck and shoulders to ripple like thick cables beneath his skin. At nearly 7 feet 2 inches tall, he looked less like a fighter and more like a moving wall of granite. Years of strongman competitions had made him famous across Europe. He had pulled trucks, bent steel bars, broken chains wrapped around his chest, knocked professional wrestlers unconscious with a single forearm strike. His confidence had gradually transformed into arrogance. Tonight, he believed he would prove that technique meant nothing against absolute power. His manager smiled proudly. "They're all waiting for you." Victor smirked. "They're waiting to watch a legend disappear." He looked toward the opposite dressing room. Bruce Lee. The name irritated him. Every magazine talked about speed. Every interview praised precision. Every martial artist spoke about philosophy. Victor hated philosophy. He respected only force. He cracked his knuckles. They'll finally understand. Across the hallway, Bruce Lee sat quietly on a wooden bench. No loud music, no shouting, no dramatic warm-up, only silence. His breathing remained slow and perfectly controlled. His black training pants rested neatly over lightweight martial arts shoes. His upper body remained uncovered, revealing lean muscles carved through years of relentless discipline rather than brute strength. An elderly instructor entered the room carrying 2 cups of tea. Bruce accepted one with a grateful smile. "You seem calm." Bruce looked toward the closed door. "The loudest storms usually pass the quickest." The instructor sighed. "He's much bigger than anyone you've demonstrated against." Bruce smiled gently. "That only changes what people expect." Outside, the announcer's booming voice filled the arena. "Ladies and gentlemen," the audience erupted, "please welcome the strongest competitor ever invited to this stage." Smoke drifted across the entrance tunnel. Heavy drums thundered through the speakers. Victor emerged beneath bright white lights. The crowd gasped instantly. He looked enormous. Children sitting near the front instinctively leaned backward. Even experienced fighters exchanged uncertain glances. Victor slowly raised both arms. Cheers exploded. He enjoyed every second. He walked toward the platform with exaggerated confidence, flexing each arm as photographers' flashes illuminated him from every direction. The announcer continued, "Standing nearly 7 feet 2 inches. More applause. Weighing approximately 210 kilograms, the crowd roared louder. Victor climbed onto the platform. The reinforced wood groaned beneath his weight. He laughed into a microphone. "I hope they built this thing strong enough." More laughter echoed throughout the arena. Then he looked toward the opposite entrance. "So," he smiled cruelly, "where is the little dragon?" Another wave of laughter spread through the audience. Several spectators joined in. Others remained silent. They admired Bruce Lee too much to laugh. Victor paced across the stage. "I've crushed men twice his size." He pointed toward the entrance. "And tonight," he grinned, "I'll show the world what happens when fantasy meets reality." Backstage, Bruce heard every word. He slowly finished his tea, placed the empty cup on the table, stood, adjusted the waistband of his pants. Nothing else. No anger, no visible emotion, only focus. The instructor looked at him. "You don't seem offended." Bruce smiled. "If someone's trying that hard to convince everyone they're stronger," he paused, "they're probably trying to convince themselves." The arena lights dimmed. Complete darkness surrounded the audience. A single spotlight illuminated the opposite entrance. No smoke, no dramatic music, only quiet footsteps. Bruce Lee walked into the light. The atmosphere changed instantly. Some spectators stood, others applauded. Many simply stared. Compared to Victor, Bruce appeared unbelievably small. The contrast almost looked impossible. Victor folded his arms and laughed loudly enough for nearby cameras to capture it. "That's him?" He shook his head. "I've seen teenagers bigger." Bruce continued walking without acknowledging him. Each step remained relaxed, balanced, measured. The audience noticed something strange. Bruce never looked at Victor's size. Not once. He looked only into Victor's eyes. Nothing else existed. When Bruce reached the platform, Victor intentionally stood directly in front of the stairs, blocking the way. Bruce stopped. The arena fell silent. Victor looked down at him. "You'll need permission." Bruce tilted his head slightly. "For what?" "To stand where giants stand." Several people laughed nervously. Bruce answered calmly, "I thought this platform was built for fighters." A few spectators applauded. Victor's smile faded for only a moment. He stepped aside dramatically. Bruce walked past him without another word. That irritated Victor more than any insult could have. The referee entered. A respected former boxing official with decades of experience. He extended both hands. "No strikes before my signal." Both fighters nodded. Victor barely listened. Bruce maintained eye contact. The referee stepped back. "Before we begin," Victor interrupted, "I have something to say." The crowd leaned forward. Victor grabbed the microphone again. "I've spent 20 years becoming the strongest man in every room I've entered." He slowly turned toward Bruce. "And tonight," he extended one finger until it hovered inches from Bruce's face, "I'm standing in front of the smallest." The audience reacted with mixed laughter and uncomfortable silence. Victor pushed the finger against Bruce's shoulder. Not hard, just enough to disrespect him. Bruce didn't move. Victor pushed again. Nothing. Bruce simply looked at him. No anger, no fear, no challenge, only observation. Victor leaned closer. "Are you scared?" Bruce answered softly. "No." Victor laughed. "You should be," Bruce replied. I've been studying you since you walked through that door. Victor frowned. You've seen enough? Bruce nodded. I've seen more than enough. The referee raised his voice. Gentlemen! But Victor ignored him. He suddenly shoved Bruce much harder. A loud gasp swept through the arena. Bruce slid backward one step. Only one. His feet never lost balance. Victor spread his arms dramatically. Look! He shouted toward the audience. I barely touched him! Some people laughed again. Others looked uncomfortable. Bruce calmly dusted his shoulder with one hand. Then he looked directly into Victor's eyes. For the first time all evening, he spoke with unmistakable seriousness. Don't do that again. Victor smiled. Oh? Bruce remained perfectly still. I'm asking politely. Victor laughed even louder. You think you're giving warnings? Bruce answered. Only because I prefer solving problems without hurting anyone. The audience became completely silent. Those words carried no arrogance, no threat, only certainty. Victor bent forward until their faces were only inches apart. Hurting me? Bruce nodded once. If we fight because of skill, he paused. We both learn something. His eyes hardened. But if we fight because of pride, he looked directly at Victor's enormous clenched fists. Only one of us walks away wiser. Victor exploded into laughter. The sound echoed through the arena. He looked toward the crowd. Did everyone hear that? More laughter. He turned back. You really believe you can stop me? Bruce answered with a calm voice. No. Victor blinked. Bruce continued. I believe you'll stop yourself. Confusion crossed Victor's face. What does that even mean? Bruce didn't answer. The referee finally stepped between them. Enough. He looked at both competitors. Take your positions. Bruce walked backward to his starting mark. Victor rolled his massive shoulders. The wooden platform creaked beneath every step. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters whispered into microphones. Nobody noticed Bruce's breathing. Slow, steady, completely unchanged. Victor, meanwhile, bounced aggressively on his feet. He wanted an immediate knockout. He wanted humiliation. He wanted headlines. He wanted Bruce Lee erased from public memory forever. Across the platform, Bruce quietly watched every tiny movement. The rhythm of Victor's breathing, the way his left shoulder dipped slightly before shifting weight, the stiffness in his hips, the hesitation in his right knee. To everyone else, Victor looked unstoppable. To Bruce, he looked predictable. The referee raised one arm high into the air. Every conversation inside the arena disappeared. 7,000 people held their breath. Victor smiled with complete confidence. Bruce relaxed his shoulders even further. The referee looked from one fighter to the other. His hand remained suspended above them. One final second of silence stretched across the arena like a tightly pulled wire. Then, his arm began to fall. His arm dropped. The match began. Victor exploded forward with the confidence of a man who had never questioned his own strength. The wooden platform shuddered beneath every thunderous step. His enormous frame moved faster than anyone expected, and thousands of spectators instinctively leaned forward. Bruce did not move. Not immediately. Victor's right fist shot through the air like a wrecking ball aimed directly at Bruce's head. The crowd gasped. Bruce slipped half a step to his left. The punch sliced through empty space. Victor's momentum carried him forward another foot before he could stop himself. Bruce had not counterattacked. He simply watched. A murmur spread across the arena. He missed! Victor twisted sharply and threw a left hook powerful enough to knock down a heavyweight boxer. Veins bulged across his massive forearm as his fist crashed toward Bruce's ribs. Again, nothing. Bruce rotated his body just enough for the fist to brush the fabric of his trousers. The audience erupted. "He didn't even touch him!" Victor frowned. For the first time that evening, his smile disappeared. Bruce remained relaxed, his hands floating naturally between himself and his opponent. His breathing never changed. Victor circled slowly. "You think you're funny?" Bruce answered quietly. "No." "You think you can dance forever?" Bruce shook his head. "I only move when you tell me to." Victor narrowed his eyes. "What?" Bruce kept watching him. "Every attack tells me where you'll be next." The words irritated Victor more than any insult. He charged again. This time he threw 3 consecutive punches. Right, left, overhand. Each strike carried terrifying force. Bruce flowed between them with almost unbelievable precision. His feet barely left the platform as he shifted angles by only a few inches each time. The punches landed on nothing but air. From the front row, one elderly karate instructor whispered, "He's making the giant fight shadows." A young reporter looked confused. "What does that mean?" The instructor never took his eyes off the platform. "The bigger the man," he smiled slightly, "the more energy he wastes chasing what isn't there." Victor stopped attacking. His breathing had become noticeably heavier, not because he lacked endurance, because every missed strike required enormous effort to recover from. Bruce noticed it instantly. He still refused to attack. The crowd began whispering among themselves, "Why isn't Bruce hitting him? Is he waiting? Is he scared?" Near the commentary table, an experienced boxing analyst shook his head. "No." He leaned closer to his microphone. "He's gathering information." The television audience listened carefully. "He isn't fighting Victor." The analyst pointed toward the platform. "He's studying him." Victor heard the commentator through the arena speakers. His pride couldn't tolerate it. "I'm not some experiment," he shouted. Bruce answered calmly. "No." Victor stepped forward again. "You'll start fighting." Bruce's eyes remained calm. "I already am." Victor roared and rushed forward once more. This time, he attempted something different. Instead of punching immediately, he reached out with both enormous arms, trying to grab Bruce around the waist. If he succeeded, the fight would probably end instantly. The audience recognized the danger. Several people stood from their seats. Bruce waited until the last possible instant. Victor's hands closed on empty air. Bruce had slipped behind him. Victor's own momentum carried his body forward. His feet crossed awkwardly. Bruce gently tapped Victor's shoulder. Not a strike, just a touch. Victor spun around furiously. "What was that?" Bruce lowered his hand. "A reminder." "Of what?" Bruce answered. "You're chasing me." Victor laughed angrily. "Of course I am." Bruce shook his head. "No." He pointed toward Victor's own chest. "You're chasing your anger." Those words landed harder than any punch. Victor charged again without thinking. His technique disappeared. Only power remained. He threw another massive right hand. Bruce ducked beneath it. Victor immediately followed with his elbow. Bruce stepped outside its range. Victor lifted his knee. Bruce pivoted behind him again. Every movement looked effortless. The audience could hardly believe what they were seeing. The giant had attacked more than 20 times. Not one clean strike had landed. Sweat began dripping down Victor's forehead. His chest rose and fell more heavily now. Bruce finally spoke. "You're getting tired." Victor snarled. "I've fought for hours." Bruce nodded. I know. Victor smiled confidently. So stop running. Bruce looked directly into his eyes. I'm not running. He slowly pointed toward the center of the platform. I've barely left this circle. Victor froze. He looked down. Bruce was right. Throughout the entire exchange, Bruce had remained almost exactly where he started. Victor was the one running. Victor was the one constantly changing direction. Victor was the one burning energy. The realization made him even angrier. He clenched both fists. You planned this. Bruce answered honestly, No. You expected this. Bruce nodded once. I expected your pride. Victor's face reddened. The referee watched closely. He had officiated hundreds of fights. He had never seen anything quite like this. No spectacular combinations. No dramatic exchanges. Yet somehow, everyone inside the arena sat completely silent. Every movement mattered. Every inch of distance mattered. Every breath mattered. Victor suddenly slowed down. His trainer, watching from ringside, shouted, Don't rush him! Victor ignored the advice. Corner him! Another coach yelled. Again. Victor ignored it. Bruce heard every instruction. He smiled slightly. They're trying to fight for you. Victor slammed both feet against the platform. I don't need help! Bruce nodded. I know. Victor spread his massive arms. You think you're inside my head? Bruce answered. No. Victor smirked. Good. Bruce finished quietly. You invited me there. The crowd reacted with loud applause. Victor lost his composure completely. With a furious roar, he launched the most aggressive attack of the evening. A straight punch, a hook, another hook, a knee, a charging shoulder. Bruce slipped every one. The movements became faster, so fast that many spectators struggled to follow them. Victor's attacks grew wilder. Bruce's movements became smaller. The contrast was astonishing. One looked like a raging storm, the other like calm water flowing around every obstacle. Victor's enormous shoulders smashed into empty air instead of Bruce. His own momentum carried him into the ropes surrounding the platform. The ropes stretched violently before throwing him backward. Bruce remained standing exactly where he had stopped. Not a single unnecessary movement. The audience erupted into thunderous applause. Some people were now chanting Bruce's name. Others simply stared in disbelief. Victor breathed heavily. His shirt clung tightly to his enormous body, soaked with sweat. He had thrown everything he had. Nothing worked. Bruce finally raised one hand, not to attack, to signal. Victor. The giant glared at him. What? Bruce's voice remained respectful. This is your second warning. The arena instantly became silent again. Victor frowned. What warning? Bruce looked directly into his eyes. You came here to embarrass me. He paused. I don't want to embarrass you. Victor laughed bitterly. You think you're winning? Bruce answered. No. Victor smiled. Finally, Bruce continued. I'm trying to keep you from getting hurt. The words echoed through the arena. Some spectators exchanged nervous glances. Victor's trainer suddenly stood from his chair. For the first time all evening, he looked worried, because he had noticed something the audience had not. Bruce still hadn't thrown a single real strike, not one. And yet, Victor was already exhausted. Victor slowly rolled his shoulders and wiped sweat from his face. Then his expression changed. The anger disappeared. In its place came something far more dangerous: calculation. He no longer intended to overpower Bruce. He intended to trap him. Bruce noticed the change immediately. His calm eyes narrowed slightly. For the first time since the opening bell, he adjusted his stance. Only by a fraction. The commentators caught it instantly. Bruce just changed his footing. That means he sees something. Victor lowered his center of gravity and smiled coldly. No more games. Bruce gave a small nod. I was hoping you'd say that. Neither man moved. The entire arena held its breath. Everyone sensed it. The real fight was only beginning. Victor's breathing gradually slowed. Not because he had recovered, because he had stopped allowing his emotions to control him. The wild attacks that had entertained the audience moments earlier disappeared. His enormous shoulders relaxed, and for the first time that evening, his eyes stayed fixed on Bruce instead of the cheering crowd. Bruce noticed the change immediately. A faint smile crossed his face. "There you are," he whispered. Victor heard him. "What?" Bruce never broke eye contact. "I've been waiting for the fighter." The words confused thousands of spectators. Only a handful of martial arts masters sitting near ringside understood. One elderly kung fu instructor quietly folded his arms. "Now," he murmured, "now the real match begins." The arena became unnaturally quiet. Even the commentators lowered their voices. Nobody wanted to interrupt the tension growing between the two men. Victor slowly circled to his left. Bruce mirrored him. Every movement was deliberate. Neither man blinked. The distance between them remained exactly the same. Victor suddenly smiled. "You've been reading me." Bruce nodded. "Yes." "So tell me." Victor spread his arms slightly. "What have you learned?" Bruce answered without hesitation. "You're stronger than everyone who has ever challenged you." Victor's smile widened. "I knew you'd admit it." Bruce continued. "But you've spent your entire career fighting people who feared your strength." Victor's smile disappeared. Bruce took one slow step forward. "I don't." Those two words echoed through the silent arena. Victor's jaw tightened. For the first time in years, he was facing someone who wasn't impressed by his size. Without warning, Victor attacked. No roar, no dramatic charge, just one perfectly timed, straight punch aimed at Bruce's chest. It was faster than any strike he had thrown before. Several people in the front rows gasped. Bruce barely leaned backward. The fist missed by less than an inch. Before Victor could recover, he spun into a back elbow. Bruce ducked. Victor followed with a crushing knee. Bruce pivoted outside the attack. Again, nothing landed. But something had changed. Victor wasn't wasting energy anymore. He was adapting. Bruce's eyes narrowed with approval. "Better," Victor answered through clenched teeth. "I'm finished playing." Bruce replied, "I know." Victor suddenly lowered his shoulders and drove forward with surprising precision. Instead of swinging wildly, he used his massive body like a battering ram. Bruce sidestepped. Victor anticipated it. For the first time, he cut Bruce's escape angle. The audience erupted. "He trapped him!" Bruce found himself only inches from the edge of the platform. Behind him, the ropes. In front of him, 210 kilograms of unstoppable momentum. Victor smiled. "Now where will you go?" Bruce glanced briefly behind him, then back at Victor. "I don't need to go anywhere." Victor exploded forward. Bruce waited. Closer, closer, closer. The giant's shoulder came crashing toward his ribs. At the final instant, Bruce shifted only half a step, not backward, forward. He slipped inside Victor's attack. Before anyone realized what happened, Bruce's fingertips touched Victor's forearm. A tiny movement, almost invisible. Victor's balance changed instantly. His enormous body stumbled past Bruce. The audience froze. Bruce hadn't pushed him, he had redirected him. Victor barely managed to stop himself before crashing into the ropes. His eyes widened. "What?" Bruce calmly answered. "You gave me your balance." Victor turned slowly. Now there was something new in his expression. Respect. Only a little, but enough to change everything. "You planned that?" Bruce shook his head. "You did?" Victor frowned. Bruce continued. "I simply accepted your invitation." Victor looked confused. Bruce gently tapped his own temple. "You attack power." He pointed toward Victor. "I attack decisions." The words settled over the arena like a heavy cloud. Even the commentators remained silent for several seconds. Finally, one of them whispered, "This isn't just a fight anymore. It's a lesson." Victor inhaled deeply. His trainer shouted from ringside, "Keep your distance." Victor ignored him. Instead, he slowly removed his black shirt. A collective gasp spread through the audience. The enormous muscles covering his chest and shoulders seemed carved from stone. He threw the shirt outside the platform. No more excuses. Bruce remained motionless. Victor pointed directly at him. "I'll hit you." Bruce answered calmly. "Try." Victor smiled coldly. "Oh, I will." This time there was no hesitation. Victor attacked with combinations instead of individual strikes. Jab, cross, body hook, hammer fist, low kick. Bruce's feet glided across the platform with unbelievable efficiency. He blocked only when necessary. Everything else he avoided by millimeters. The audience watched in disbelief. Every attack looked powerful enough to break bones. Every defense looked effortless. A young journalist sitting near the cameras whispered, "It doesn't even look real." An older photographer smiled, "It looks impossible." Victor suddenly fainted high. Bruce didn't react. Victor instantly switched low. Bruce still didn't react. Then, Victor launched an upward elbow toward Bruce's chin. Finally, Bruce moved. His left hand intercepted Victor's wrist. His right palm rested lightly against Victor's shoulder. Nothing more. No strike. No explosion. No dramatic throw. Just perfect timing. Victor's own momentum betrayed him. His upper body twisted awkwardly. His feet crossed. His balance vanished. The giant dropped onto one knee with a thunderous impact. The platform shook. The audience exploded. Thousands of people jumped to their feet. Victor looked down at the floor beneath him. He couldn't believe it. Bruce hadn't overpowered him. Bruce had simply allowed physics to defeat him. Bruce stepped backward immediately. He never tried to capitalize. He never attacked the kneeling man. Instead, he waited. Victor slowly stood. His breathing had become much heavier, not from exhaustion alone, from frustration. No one had ever controlled him like this. "You could have hit me." Victor's voice was quieter now. Bruce nodded. "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Bruce answered honestly. "Because I told you before the match." Victor stared at him. "I don't enjoy hurting people." Victor laughed bitterly. "You expect me to believe that?" Bruce's expression never changed. "I expect nothing." Silence returned once more. Victor looked into Bruce's eyes, searching, looking for arrogance, looking for mockery, looking for satisfaction. He found none. Only calm, only discipline, only complete confidence. For the first time that evening, Victor felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a young amateur. Doubt. His trainer suddenly climbed onto the apron outside the ropes. "Victor!" The giant didn't answer. "Stop chasing him!" Still nothing. "Make him attack first." Victor slowly nodded. Finally, advice. Bruce noticed. "So you've decided to think?" Victor smiled. "I should have done that from the beginning." Bruce gave a respectful nod. "I agree." The crowd sensed another shift. Neither man hated the other anymore. Now, they were solving a problem. One through overwhelming strength, the other through perfect precision. The referee stepped closer. He looked carefully at both fighters. Neither had suffered a visible injury, yet everyone understood. The next exchange would decide everything. Victor rolled his neck. His fists tightened. Bruce inhaled once, then exhaled slowly. The arena fell completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, not a single movement among 7,000 spectators. Victor lowered his center of gravity. Bruce subtly shifted his lead foot. Their eyes locked. Victor suddenly saw something. For the first time, Bruce wasn't waiting anymore. He was ready to attack. Victor's heartbeat quickened. Bruce's gaze became razor-sharp. Then Bruce quietly spoke one final sentence before either man moved. "This is your last warning." The words hung in the air. Victor answered with a determined smile. "I know." And in the very next heartbeat, both men launched forward at exactly the same time. Victor's enormous frame surged forward with frightening speed. Bruce moved at the exact same instant. For a split second, the entire arena watched two completely different philosophies collide. One represented overwhelming strength. The other represented absolute precision. Neither man hesitated, neither looked away. Time seemed to slow. Victor's massive right fist tore through the air with enough force to send a gust of wind across the platform. The spectators in the front rows instinctively flinched before the punch had even arrived. Bruce stepped inside the attack. Not backward, not sideways. Forward. Victor's eyes widened. He had expected Bruce to evade once again. Instead, Bruce entered the most dangerous range possible. Their shoulders nearly collided. Bruce's left hand gently redirected Victor's wrist, while his right palm struck the center of Victor's chest. Not with brute force, but with flawless timing. The impact itself looked almost insignificant. Several spectators barely noticed it, but Victor felt everything. His balance disappeared. His own momentum became his greatest enemy. Before he could recover, Bruce pivoted around his right foot and delivered a lightning-fast elbow to Victor's upper arm, followed immediately by a short side kick to the giant's lead thigh. None of the strikes looked devastating, yet together they completely disrupted Victor's structure. His enormous body staggered backward. The wooden platform groaned beneath him. Gasps echoed throughout the arena. Bruce still didn't chase him. He simply reset his stance. Calm, balanced, waiting. Victor planted both feet and inhaled sharply. His chest rose like a massive bellows. For the first time that evening, he understood. Bruce had never intended to overpower him. He had been dismantling him piece by piece. The realization stung more than any strike. Victor roared, not out of confidence, out of desperation. He launched forward one final time. Every ounce of his remaining strength exploded into a relentless combination. A crushing hook, a hammer fist, a knee, a shoulder charge. Bruce became almost impossible to follow. His movements flowed together like water. He slipped the hook, deflected the hammer fist, pivoted away from the knee. Then, at the exact moment Victor committed his full weight to the shoulder charge, Bruce acted. One step, one turn, one perfectly timed side kick to Victor's midsection. Not a theatrical flying kick, not an exaggerated cinematic strike. A compact, technically perfect side kick delivered with impeccable timing. Victor's own momentum multiplied its effect. His feet left the platform. His gigantic body stumbled backward 3 heavy steps. The ropes stretched to their limit as they caught his weight. For one heartbeat, the entire arena fell silent. Then the ropes snapped him forward again. Victor tried to regain his footing. His exhausted legs refused to obey. He dropped to one knee. The impact echoed through the building. Silence. No cheers, no shouting, only stunned disbelief. The giant who had promised humiliation now knelt in front of the man he had mocked. The referee watched carefully. "Can you continue?" Victor remained motionless for several seconds. His breathing was heavy. His shoulders trembled. Slowly, he lifted his head. Bruce had not moved. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't posing for cameras. He simply stood there, waiting. Victor looked into Bruce's eyes. There was no hatred, no arrogance, no satisfaction, only respect. Victor slowly rose to his feet. The audience began applauding. At first, only a few people. Then dozens, then hundreds. Finally, the entire arena stood. The applause thundered through the building. Victor looked around. For the first time in many years, the applause wasn't for him. Strangely, he wasn't angry. He turned back toward Bruce. "I understand now." Bruce remained silent. Victor took a deep breath. "When I arrived tonight," he glanced toward the crowd, "I thought strength meant making everyone fear you." He looked back at Bruce. "I was wrong." Bruce finally spoke. "Real strength begins when you no longer need to prove it." Victor lowered his head. "I insulted you." Bruce nodded once. "You did." "I pushed you." "Yes. I wanted to embarrass you." Bruce answered calmly. "I know." Victor hesitated before speaking again. "You could have hurt me." Bruce smiled faintly. "There was never a reason to." The giant's expression softened. "You warned me 3 times." Bruce nodded. "I hoped you'd listen." Victor extended his enormous hand. The arena became quiet once more. Bruce looked at the offered hand for only a moment before shaking it firmly. The applause became even louder. Photographers rushed toward the platform, their cameras flashing without pause. The image of the towering giant respectfully shaking Bruce Lee's hand would become the defining photograph of the evening. The master of ceremonies climbed onto the platform. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice nearly disappeared beneath the cheering, "I believe we've witnessed something much greater than a contest." The audience continued applauding. He smiled. "Tonight wasn't about discovering who was stronger." He looked toward both men. "It was about discovering what true strength really is." Victor picked up his black shirt from the floor. He laughed quietly. "I've won dozens of trophies." He looked at Bruce. "But tonight I learned more than I did in 20 years of victories." Bruce answered, "A lesson learned with humility is worth more than 100 easy victories." Victor nodded. "I'll remember that." The referee stepped between them and raised Bruce's hand. The arena erupted once again. Some spectators were cheering Bruce's incredible technique. Others applauded Victor for accepting defeat with dignity. Even those who had laughed at Bruce before the match now stood in complete admiration. Near ringside, the elderly kung fu instructor smiled proudly. His young student asked, "Master, how could someone so much smaller defeat a man that powerful?" The old instructor looked toward the now empty center of the platform. "He didn't defeat the man's muscles." The student frowned. "Then what did he defeat?" The instructor answered quietly. "He defeated impatience, pride, and anger." Outside the arena, reporters surrounded Victor before he reached his car. One journalist hurried forward. "Victor!" The giant stopped. "What surprised you most about Bruce Lee?" Victor smiled. "It wasn't his speed." Another reporter quickly asked, "His power?" Victor shook his head. "No." "What was it then?" Victor looked back toward the brightly lit arena. "He never fought to destroy me." The reporters waited. "He fought to stop me from destroying myself." Those words appeared in newspapers across the country the following morning. Weeks later, people still debated the techniques Bruce had used. Some insisted it was impossible. Others tried to imitate his movements in dojos around the world. But the people who had actually been inside the arena remembered something else. They remembered the silence, the moment when 210 kilograms of overwhelming strength knelt before discipline, timing, and control. Years later, those who had witnessed that night would tell the story to younger martial artists. Not as the night a giant was humiliated, but as the night a giant discovered humility. And whenever someone asked what made Bruce Lee different from everyone else, those witnesses always gave the same answer. It wasn't that he knew how to win a fight. They paused, remembering the quiet confidence that never left Bruce's face. It was that he knew exactly when the fight had already been won, long before the first decisive strike was ever thrown. Bruce walked out of the arena exactly as he had entered it, without celebration, without boasting, without looking back. The crowd continued applauding long after he had disappeared into the tunnel, because that night they hadn't simply witnessed an extraordinary martial artist. They had witnessed the difference between power that demanded respect and character that earned it.